Well, joining us now is former U.S. Army Captain Bish Johnson. Good to see you, and thanks for your time. Well, the leadership of the FCT and other places, well, let's start with Plateau State, where curfew has been imposed, and after that we saw that killings continued just after the 24-hour curfew there, the Dr. Dawn curfew. What do you think truly we may be missing in such places, to the extent that such measures that would have helped in bringing about peace in those areas haven't actually helped?
Hi, good evening, and thank you for having me. You know, the last time you and I spoke on this particular subject matter, I was very emphatic that the only way for us to know exactly what is the motivation behind these killings is for security agencies to be able to arrest just one of the perpetrators of these crimes. So that way that individual can be interrogated. We'll find out what is the motivation behind their actions, who is funding them, who is sponsoring them, where are they from? Because the solution to the problem will be different if they are Nigerians than when they are coming from outside the country. We talked about our porous borders, how these borders have been infiltrated by foreigners. And if we don't apprehend at least one person, we won't be able to get a trove of intelligence information that is required for us to be able to determine the motivation behind the killings. And it's very important. Since 24th of December, I have not heard that one single person has been apprehended for the killings that took place on the 24th of December last year. So that is the problem we have with this crisis that we have in Nigeria, is that we don't do due diligence. I don't think the security people are doing enough to apprehend those who are really behind. I'm not talking about arresting innocent people. I'm talking about those really behind the killings.
So, would you agree with the former INEC chairman, Atahiru Jega, when he says, look, politics has interfered and the military is profiting from the war on terror? Could that be part of the reason why this continues to linger, and why maybe these arrests, have not really been happening?
You see, this is Nigeria. You can't rule out anything. Because for these things have not, they didn't just start overnight. These problems have been on there for at least a decade now. And if we are a country of intelligent people, and we have one particular problem that has been, stressing us for a decade, and we've not been able to find a solution to that problem, that there is something really behind that particular problem. So I can't rule out anything, considering the fact that our security agencies have not been able to nip these problems in the bud. They continue to happen over and over and over again, and you just see our security agencies being more like reactionary forces. They don't preempt these things from happening in the first place. They only react after the incidents are taking place.
But in the case of the December 24th, that's a Christmas Eve attacks that led to the killings of over 180 people, we're told that there was intel. Allegedly, letters, bandits or terrorists actually wrote letters to the communities in November of 2023 that they were going to, strike. In spite of that, nothing happened.
Well, personally, I have not heard from the military either admitting or refuting that particular claim. But this is not the first time we are hearing something like that they will write, they will inform the security agencies, and nothing happens. And it has continued over and over again. So any claim put forth by any Nigerian, I can't rule that out until the military comes out and tells us, look, this is not what happened and this is what exactly happened. We will continue to believe what the citizens are saying.
But again, people have been speaking. I go back to Atahiru Jega's talk on the day. And just recently we spoke to a retired general who is also asking questions. Is it possible that intelligence is being shared, and perhaps those to work on such intelligence haven't actually acted upon them?
Sure. You see, one thing, having served, I'm a military intelligence, I was a military intelligence officer. You see, one thing is to have, credible intel. Another is to have intel that is actionable. and another is to share that intel to the appropriate authorities that will act on it. So what I am thinking is happening that there may be intelligence, but those intelligence sometimes do not get to the actual authorities that will give order for those intel to be acted upon. And so that seems to be what is happening. If indeed there was intel given to the armed forces and they failed to act, it's possible that it didn't get to the authorities that could have given order for that intelligence to be acted upon. You can have an intel that will lie with you. You don't have the power to order for that intel to be acted upon until something happens. So not everybody has the ability or the authority to order for certain actions to take place.
So there's a huge gap between getting intel and ensuring that intel actually gets to those who will give the go-ahead,
utilize it,
you know, for something to be done. Well,
exactly.
FCT, let's talk about the FCT, where there are growing concerns about the state of insecurity, kidnapping, and what have you, and the brazen audacity of these criminals in the FCT. Well, Wike is saying set up vigilante groups, is asking the community leaders, you know, to come up with vigilante groups. How effective will those be, or how should they be made effective if vigilante groups are the way to go?
Well, how effective they will be depends on how they are organized, who the individuals are. I heard the FCT minister said that they should, you know, vet those people, you know, profile them to make sure they're the right people. Now, if they get the right people in place and they provide them with the right equipment, maybe they will be effective. But it goes back to what some of us have been agitating for. Because if you look at vigilante, you know, local government setting up vigilante, there's nothing different from states having their own police. You know, security is local. There is nobody who will understand your community better than yourself. The type of policing structure that we have in Nigeria is one of the reasons why we're having this high level of insecurity. Because you have a policeman who is from Bauchi State, you recruit him in Bauchi State, train him, and you send him to Bayelsa. He doesn't understand anything about Bayelsa, doesn't speak their language. He can be right here while people are planning on how to carry out criminal activity, and he won't understand it. So instead of all this, because all these solutions they are proffering, as far as I'm concerned, are just short-term temporary solutions. We need a permanent and long-term solution to these problems. And the long-term permanent solution is states having their own security outfits. So that way, if something happens in that state, you can hold the governor of that state responsible. Right now, you can't hold any governor responsible if there's a breakdown of law and order in his state, because he can tell you, I'm not the chief security officer. There's only one chief security officer in Nigeria, and that one chief security officer in Nigeria is the president and commander-in-chief.
Is that why the curfew in Plateau State doesn't seem to be working?
Well, I wouldn't say that is the reason why it didn't work. The curfew was only for 24 hours, and the criminals knew it was just for 24 hours. Maybe before they put in the curfew, they didn't take into consideration that, look, this curfew, something may happen as soon as the curfew expired. All the people had to do was just to wait it out. Which was exactly what they did.
Is it possible for anyone to really profit on insecurity?
There are people who are contractors in the defense industry who, so long as we are having these insecurity problems, they will be profiting from it. If in any conflict, not just the situation we have in Nigeria, if you go to Israel, if you go to Ukraine, all of the places where you have conflicts, there are people who are profiting from those conflicts.
And are they so powerful to the extent that they will ensure that those conflicts remain?
Very powerful. These are the deep state. These are the people that determine what happens in the government. It's very difficult to take them down because these are highly entrenched interests. They are not ordinary people like you and I. These are people who are entrenched in the system, who it will be very, very difficult. It's easier to even take down the government than taking these people down.
So how does that render the war against insecurity, the war against terrorism, the war against banditry, kidnapping, and what have you, if you have this level of complicity of those who don't want it to end?
Well, that is the challenge that we're facing right now, because those people who have vested and entrenched interests in what is happening now will never give up. They want the status quo to continue. So whatever action you take they are there to counter that action to make sure that the status quo remains. And that is a very serious problem. It's not just only here, it's everywhere. Unless the government is strong enough to take down this cabal or deep state that have this vested interest in the crisis and insecurity we have in the country, it's going to take us a very, very long period of time to be able to solve this insecurity problem. Have you ever wondered, there's been more than 3 different administrations that have not been able to end insecurity in Nigeria? Goodluck Jonathan faced insecurity in his administration. Muhammad Buhari faced insecurity in his administration.
For 8 years.
This Bola Tinubu is already facing insecurity in his administration. So have we even wondered why those people were not able to solve insecurity problem?
Very good question. Very good question. I must say, ex-U.S. Army Captain Bish Johnson, thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight tonight.